My clock says 5 after, so we're going to go ahead and jump in. I know that some other folks will likely stream in, but we are recording this for posterity, so have no fear. We will be disseminating with our members and our audience who can't join us live. My name is Sam Tallman. I'm Director of Energy Services for Green Power Technologies Puerto Rico and a member of the board at Fundación Borincana. I'm joined as always, by founding director Tom King of Fundación Borincana and my conversation partner and co-principal here at the Puerto Rico Energy Forum. This is our second event in March, second conversation of March. It's Puerto Rico Energy in 60 Minutes, where we discuss the last month of news updates and topical events that are going on in the energy sector in Puerto Rico and things that are affecting the power on the island. And we're going to get to our main guest, Daniel Hernández, here in a moment. But we also have an announcement from Nathan Wiggum. Nate is the president of N Capital and organizer of an upcoming event here in San Juan called Uncorrelated. And Nate, I'm going to give you the floor to talk a little bit about your event, and then Danielle will move into our main conversation. So Nate, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Awesome. Likewise. Thanks for having me. And good to see you. Good to see you, Tom, and everybody else here.
Seeing it.
Yeah, man. So I'll try and be brief. Like Sam said, I'm one of the co-hosts of a alternative investment conference that is in about a week and a half in Puerto Rico. We're really looking to establish this as the preeminent alternative investment conference of the Caribbean. So we have a lot of representation, of course, from Puerto Rico across multiple sectors, but we have folks from the Cayman Islands, the USVI, the BVIs, Jamaica, and other islands coming in. If you'd like to attend, I can put the link in the chat here, or you've already done it. Perfect.
I can beat you to it.
Awesome. Great. Less work for me. I love that. So the structure of the event is basically a GPLP cap intro event and across all different types of alt sectors. So we have private equity, private credit, real estate, and we do have a climate investing panel that Sam has been gracious enough to moderate for us. There's going to be some interesting projects there that we're going to be showcasing. So anyone that's an active investor, and we do try and vet that out, but anyone that is actively deploying capital, we invite them to attend. And then anyone that is looking to raise capital or would just like to attend to check out the content, the networking, they're welcome to purchase a ticket. And we've created a special discount code or discounted sign-up page for anyone who comes in as part of the Energy Forum. So right now we have about 250 people signed up. We'll probably hit 3, we think, by the conference, which was actually greater than our initial target. So it's going to be really well attended. We got 60 speakers, including a former governor of Puerto Rico. So we're really excited about this. Actually, it came together really quickly. So
Nate, remind folks what the dates are, what the location is, and if you could put the specific Puerto Rico Energy Forum discount link in chat. We'll make sure that we share that with our listeners and viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So the dates are March 30th to April 1st. So basically, it's not this coming Sunday, but the next Sunday we have a welcome reception in the evening. And then the 2 days of content are Monday and Tuesday. That's March 31st and April 1st. It's all at the Vanderbilt in Condado, so very accessible. And then, I will drop the special link just for the Puerto Rico Energy Forum in the chat in just a second here since I pulled up.
Yeah. No, beautiful hotel, beautiful venue. Obviously, Condano, that whole area, it's a terrific area to hang out. I'll just note that you actually have 2 board members from Fundación Borincana. Zaira Ferrara is also a senior exec at Acumen and coming down. And I don't know if she's chairing, speaking, or
she's speaking on our. We have a impact investing panel.
Yeah.
So we're excited to have her speak on that.
So we're absolutely thrilled to kind of support this, and I think this is definitely something that's going to grow, and it should become a regular event on the calendar.
Agreed.
It's
Nate, if you can stick around and include that
sure.
link, and anybody who may be on the line and has questions for Nate, feel free to put it in chat or message him directly. Nate,
Yep.
it may also be worthwhile to have a contact link if there's folks that want to reach out to you directly about participating.
Absolutely. I will drop the link in the chat right now along with my email. So, and yeah, feel free to hit me up with any questions.
No,
Awesome.
we'll get a blast out as well. So
Yeah,
Awesome.
absolutely.
Very
Nate,
much, really appreciate it, guys.
Nate, thank you and appreciate your support of the Puerto Rico Energy Forum. All right, on to the main event. Danny, I'll introduce you and then we'll get started. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right, perfect. So Daniel Hernandez is the Vice President of Operations at Genera PR. I think his primary objective at Polytechnica was getting his electrical engineering degree, but he was also a volleyball player, as we learned a moment ago. He has over 30 years of experience working at PREPA, where he served as chief engineer and later generation director. He later moved to be the director of renewables at Luma Energy, and he now serves, as I mentioned, as the vice president of operations at Genera. He's also the founder, creator, editor-in-chief of a new publication that started this year called the Puerto Rico Energy Transformation, PRET, where you can follow his energy insights through his publication on LinkedIn. And we're very happy to have you. Thanks for joining Puerto Rico Energy in 60 Minutes.
Gracias, bienvenido, Danny.
Thank you, both of you, and for me it's a pleasure. It's a great opportunity to share some thoughts, share some ideas. We have a lot of challenges in Puerto Rico in the energy sector, and I believe we need to work together because I think we are in that moment in time in which we're gonna have the last of the previous generation, and then we are just in the middle of a new energy generation for the next several years. So we are in the right moment in the history. So it's a great moment to all of us to share our experiences, share our what we believe is the best for Puerto Rico. This is my goal to share, my experience working in the electrical system for so many years on the all areas, on distribution, substation, generation, transmission, everything in all these areas, and especially, working with renewables because I started working with renewables for so many years when just the first utility scale came in the 2011, 12. I was the commission engineer at that moment in time. I had the opportunity to be the lead in the commissioning of the point of interconnection of all these big projects that are still in service, such as Fonroche in Humacao or Oriana in Isabela, and many others. So it's a great opportunity for me to share all this stuff.
So,
Fantastic.
Danny, we're going to talk about the future and we're going to talk about renewables in due time, but let me try to tease out what's happening in the present. And it seems that more and more when customers experience outages here in Puerto Rico, Luma is the first to announce that it's Genera's fault. How much of the challenge is on the generation side and how much is on the transmission and distribution side?
Yeah, let me just for the benefit of everybody to trying to explain this in the more simple way. Why the power goes out in Puerto Rico. Okay, let's start with transmission distribution. Now there is two main reasons of situation that happens in the transmission and distribution network that produce service interruption. The first one is the equipment in obsolescence. That's the first one. There is a huge amount of infrastructure that needs to be replaced. Breakers, substations, protection relays, and many others. And that's the number one. The second one, maybe other persons can say something different. The second one is the vegetation management. These are the two main reasons why we have or experienced so many interruptions from the transmission and distribution. And this is under Luma's responsibility. On generation, we have like three different main reasons. The first one is the aging. The aging of the units has been in service for more than 60 years. The second one is the lack of capital investment due to the bankruptcy of PREPA. And the third one, which is the more concern for me because it's from on the operation side, is the effects of renewables over the operation of these steam units that were not designed to operate together with renewables. That's a huge situation that we need to address shortly with different approach. So back in your question, let's say that in Puerto Rico, the last year, we experienced around 110 load sheddings, interruptions coming from the generation side. 75% of these load sheddings is because we don't have fast response. What that means, every time we experience a load shedding, a force outage, let's say one of the unit is just out of service suddenly, the frequency drop, and then automatically, Luma disconnect thousands of customers just to balance the generation available at that moment in time with the load. This is like the basic rule of the system. You need to have all the time the same amount of generation capacity than the load. If the load increase, the generation must increase. If the load is reduction, there's another reduction on the generation side. So that's the basic in terms of operation. So the 75% of this load shedding that affect all thousands of customers is because the system doesn't have lack of fast response. So that's why the batteries, what we are proposing, is so important. Once we have this project in service potentially in less than 2 years, we are going to mitigate more than 90% of these 75% of load shedding. The other 25% of the load shedding in Puerto Rico is because we don't have enough capacity. Sometimes we just don't have enough capacity. So the battery, once again, will provide 430 megawatts. The battery that Genera is proposing and is executing 430 megawatts during 4 hours. So if you think in this both scenario, the 75% of the lack of fast response and the 25% of the lack of capacity, the battery can solve potentially more than 90% of all these scenarios. So that's super important, at least for me, to share with everybody. Short-term solution will be the battery, not only for that, for many other things that we can discuss later. So the other super important fact here in terms of reliability of the system is the technology side. We need to to replace the current technology that we have. There is no way to manage the variability of the renewable during the daytime window, maybe between the 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. with the current technology that we have. We have 72% of our base load generator comes from the 60s, from the technology of the 60s. Those are steam generators. They were designed to be producing power 100% or close to 100% of their capacity all the time. So what is happening right now? During the maybe 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. when the renewables came to maximum capacity, which is good. What we need to do with the big power plants, we need to reduce the power to the minimum. And then suddenly during the afternoon, maybe after 3, we need to increase the power once again until the midnight, until 8 p.m., which is the peak demand hour for the customer. That cycling is producing a lot of failures in the boilers. So that's one of the reasons we need to urgently replace the technology with flexible technology. We need more batteries. We need more mid-size turbines, mid-size
Peaking
motor,
units.
you know,
Yeah.
demand response program, BPP to reduce power. You know, all this flexible technology is the mix that I believe is what Puerto Rico needs. And remember, we have 6 months of hurricane season, 6 months that potentially we can experience blackout in the island. You see, so we need a strong blackout capabilities in the island as well to provide service, for, priority loads, such as hospital, water pumps and others. So
So
Yeah.
on that note, Daniel, so we'll talk about the best project here in a moment as well, and some of the points you just made with regards to flexibility. Thinking about the most immediate term, Luma recently announced some projections, and Governor Gonzalez commented on them, that we're likely to experience 4 times more outages this summer compared to last year, and that between May and October, we may experience 90 selective outages. The best project, flexible generation, additional generation, utility scale generation. Those are projects that are in the works, but will likely come online at some point in the next several years, if everything goes well. What is the strategy for the next 6 months or so, or 7 months of the rest of the spring, and then going into hurricane season, absent those other and short term in the grand scheme of things, but not immediate term solutions?
Yeah, that's a great question, and let me explain you the idea here. So first of all, we have several units under repair, and we call it short-term repairs. What should happen from now until July? We should have around 1,100 megawatts additional from units that are currently under repair. On April, for instance, the unit 6 on San Juan should be in service at the end of April. Then on May, we have Aguirre number 2 and Costa Sur number 5 that should come in service. Those are, big power plants. For instance, on San Juan 6, the unit should back April on 150 megawatts. On Aguirre number 2 should be back in May for 370. At Costa Sur 5, we should back in the 350, around that. So as you can imagine, this is, big power plants coming during the next couple of months. Then on July, we expect to have Palo Seco number 4 back in line for 200 megawatts. And
Yeah.
when you add, this the capacity of this unit that are in process to be back in service is around 1,100 of megawatts. But if the question is if that capacity is enough, the answer is no. When you apply, for instance, the some general rules for a system like we have in Puerto Rico, the total capacity that we should have is around 5,000 of megawatts. That's the right number. If you apply the NERC, for instance, the NERC rule in Puerto Rico for a peak demand of 3,300, which is more or less the peak that we should experience this year, we should have first the capacity to provide that 3,300 plus 700 of spinning reserve plus around 900 of for maintenance, and then plus 600 for any unplanned maintenance. You see, so and those are numbers, those are facts coming from the NERC rule. So if you apply this in Puerto Rico, this is the level of capacity that we should have to manage the peak. And when I say the peak, you need to design for the worst scenario, which is the 3300 in
Right.
Puerto Rico. That is something that we can experience in any moment during the summer up to October. So that should be the
Yeah.
level of generation where we are. So when we finish these repairs that I just mentioned, we should be close to 3900. All right, 3900. So saying that, what we did since last year is to suggest to the Energy Bureau to add more temporary generation until we can have the battery project in service, until we can have the peakers project in service. So once we lost Aguirre #1 with another catastrophic failure, we increase the request. Instead of 565, we are asking for 800 of temporary generation. These are the same numbers that comes from Luma's studies recently, the resource adequacy. These are the same numbers that the P3 office are in agreement. So now the next step is that the P3 will publish an RFP to bring around 800 of temporary generation, potentially in barges, power barges, and in that sense, maybe in the next 3 months, the additional energy can be in service, additional of these repairs that we are working with. The idea is to be, close to in the 4,500 of capacity. That should be a safe level of generation until we can put the batteries and until we can put a new the new peakers. But this is, once again, this is not the solution. The solution must be to replace this steam units technology in the system. They are not working. They are not being used, for the design they were thinking.
Yeah.
So that's the big issue that we have right now.
So we've talked a lot in the Energy Forum about Luma's challenges given the counterparty in that contract is in bankruptcy in PREPA. We hear a lot less about Haneda, but ultimately Haneda is in the same position. Before we get into some of the sort of the operational goals, can you just give us a flavor as to how that bankruptcy impacts daily operations at Haneda? I mean, does that limit in the same capacity your access to working capital and ability to replace the peakers and ability to give us some sense of what having a counterpart that's bankrupt does to your operations?
Yeah, basically, first of all, the budget that Genera is using is approved by the Fiscal Energy Board, and needs to be approved by the P3 as well. So, and the PREP. So all the regulators agencies needs to approve that. Second, the peakers project, the battery projects are federal funds. We are taking advantage of the federal funds in order to execute all these important projects. Certainly, what if we can have, or the government or PREPA can have access to more funds that we, out of the bankruptcy, will allow us to have more capital improvement projects that can accelerate or expedite, the improvements that are required in the system. Remember the second issue that we have in the system is the lack of capital investment because of the bankruptcy. So if we can have more money to invest in capital projects, that will for sure accelerate the improvement that we need to have in the system in order to get more reliable operation.
Yeah, I think the bankruptcy is one of the things that I've been talking about for 6, 7, 8 years now. But the the impact that it's having on you is, I mean, certainly material in terms of, ability to do certain things that would enhance the resiliency and the reliability of the existing assets. But I think, what you've said is absolutely right. We have to replace the technology, and that effectively means, new plants, different sorts of things. So uh, clearly addressing the, as I would call it, putting a band-aid on it, or baling wire and scotch tape to an old system that really should be replaced. There is a certain level of access to capital that is affecting you, but how bad is it? I know there are plans, and there are other things, but how much is the lack of access to working capital, to the things you want, actually affecting your operations?
Yeah, let me give you this this
Yeah.
example. The capital project, the budget for capital project that we have is less than $100 million for more than potentially 70 units. In the previous years, I remember that in Puerto Rico, we were just paying Ecoelectrica and AES over $100 million for, their capital investment. Only for, in case of the AES, 2 units, and Ecoelectrica had 3 units. And and PREPA has less budget for around 80 units. You see the big difference between the two. So certainly, Genera is managing right now the same amount of budget for capital investment. It's less than $100 million. It's a big challenge. It's a big challenge.
Yeah.
Right now, we have 14 additional units. You remember the FEMA temporary generators? Now they are on their Genera's budget. With the same budget, we need to manage 25 megawatt each generator. This is crazy. It's a very expensive operation, and obviously we are using the funds that we are receiving as an operator, same as Luma, that they're using the budget that the government assigned us to manage the fleet. But it's a huge challenge to keep the right amount of capital investment and maintenance on these units, especially on the pretty old units, because it's not the same to maintain a pretty new unit or recent unit, a recent technology than the steam.
Well, and on top of the fact that there's accelerated deteroration, as you had mentioned, right?
That's right.
So,
And in top of that, we're using the steam units in the wrong way, because we are cycling the units, reducing the power during the noon, and then just ramping up very fast on each evening.
Right.
So this is the reason we urgently need to replace that.
So Danny,
not designed that way, right? I mean, if you're ramping them back and forth, it's like you can do that for a short period of time in an emergency, but I mean that has wear and tear and availability and maintenance, real cost maintenance implications. And as unfortunately, a good friend of mine from Utuado likes to say, those things that are installed on a temporary basis in Puerto Rico tend to become permanent. And there's a famous bridge that was wiped out by the Hurricane Fiona, that was installed and was used in Utuado, for a while, but it was a temporary bridge.
So Danny, let me thinking about costs, thinking about operational costs. Let's change gears a little bit and talk about this utility scale battery energy storage project that Genera is working on. $760 million, 430 megawatts of 4-hour storage capacity across, is it six different sites around the island, strategically located.
I can present you the map if you want. I have the map with me.
Yeah, feel free to pull
Yeah.
that up. While you're doing that, let me pose the question. So your Genera is doing that project with federal funds, and one of my key concerns, sort of by two-part concerns, is the utility economics that make sure that viable utility practices, for the long term exist, so that we don't get into a similar situation with that PREPA is now in, and got themselves in, with regards to having operational costs that they couldn't cover. And then the other piece is, what happens when federal funds may not be existing. So can you talk to us a little bit about so that $760 million is going to be covered by federal funds. What's the plan for ongoing operations, maintenance, repairs, replacement of that technology beyond the $760 million?
That's a great question, and you know, it's not only we are gonna have new batteries, but it's a new technology for us as well. So what we did is to add in that purchase a long-term service agreement for the 20 years period with Tesla. So Tesla will help us in that, in all these years. They are going to provide us with the right maintenance and support in order to keep the batteries working properly. So that's the only potentially cost that the ratepayers will have to pay for the batteries, because all the capex for the purchase and for the installation is already covered with the federal funds. And not only that, the battery will provide savings for the customer. Savings. And let me can you see my screen or not?
Yes, we can.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So let me go to these are all the power plants that we have been talking about, all the steam units, as you can see, the years of these units. And this is the relationship between the steam units and the combined cycles that we already have as a base load in the system. And I'm going to be very fast on this. This is the demand behavior last year. It was crazy because for the first time in our history, we had a flat demand instead of to have only a peak demand typically in August. Last year we have like a flat demand from June until October. That was
That is weird.
very, very unusual.
It plateaued.
Yeah,
Stayed high.
we believe this is because we experienced last year potentially the more warm or high temp year in many years before. So in terms of as you can see, in terms of the peak demand, we need to be prepared to experience any peak over 3,200 in any moment. Same this is energy. The energy has been increasing every year with some exceptions. For instance, in 2022, because the Hurricane Fiona, or after the Hurricane Maria has been around, increasing maybe in the 2020 because of the earthquake that we experienced and the COVID. But as you can see, last year we still experienced more energy consumption, and the only reason is the high temp. Because in Puerto Rico, we had not received, more people. There's no new manufacturers or facilities opening. So it's just pure high temp that produce less, that produce inefficiency situation or issues in the air conditioning systems, mainly. Because the second reason is the electric vehicle, the charging station that obviously is another new charge or new load in Puerto Rico. So let me go back. Let me go directly. This is the participation, and let me share you this, because in this slide, this is the idea is just to present you. This is the cycling. Every one of these columns represents one power plant. The bigger power plant that we have in the island is the renewable, that currently we have around 1100, which is the left column. So the other units, as you can see, needs to reduce their power during the day, and then going back to full capacity during the night. This is the operation that is producing the majority of the failures in the power plants.
So, Daniel,
they were not designed for that. You see?
this is a critically important piece of information for people to understand. So let's stay here for a moment.
Yep.
You wrote in the most recent PRET publication the need to have incentives in the system for businesses and solar, or excuse me, businesses and residences to to adopt DERs. But what we're seeing here is that the more, and I think they're heavily incentivized as it is, the more folks defect from the grid, and they're not really defecting, right? They're defecting for when they can produce their own power and then relying on the grid to produce the power when they can't. It seems like, and what we've talked about is that in the irony is that that's on one hand some flexibility, on the other hand it is a total strain on the entire system in terms of being able to flip back and forth between those two sources, particularly due to lack of synchronicity and a variety of other technical issues with having the intermittency of renewables. What type of incentives should we have for individual energy users to participate in the broader energy system on the island?
I think we need to incentivize the different sectors to add batteries, because we have a big issue in terms of the ramping. The batteries that are installed for residential, they're using as emergency generators. That's basically the type of use. But we need to use, to incentive the customer to use that battery to manage the ramp. Every time we experience a cloud, we are losing right now because as you can see here, 850 megawatts are there without any control. Every time we just experience a cloud, we are, experience like a ramping down of potentially over 500 megawatts without ramping. So what ramping means, if you have batteries, you can manage the power output of your system. So we can have more stable situation until the other unit, the conventional unit, can ramping up.
So they serve as shock absorbers.
That's right. So the thing is, I believe we need to incentive, or the government needs to incentive to the people first. The ones that have battery in their home, use the battery as to manage the ramp of their system during the day. And second, we need to add more batteries. You see, there's two different things. We need to add more batteries because during the day, we're going to have potentially in the next couple of years, an excess of renewable energy, solar energy in Puerto Rico, and there's no way to manage that without batteries. So we urgently need to add more batteries in order to manage the minimum of the. You remember or the terms duck curve? You know what the curve is? It's this one. This is the behavior of the demand since we have renewable energy in Puerto Rico. In this case, the minimum, when I said minimum here in 1400, is that this is the capacity or the demand we are experiencing during the day. Before the renewables, we experienced a peak demand of over 2000 during noon, and now it's less than, in some occasions, some days, less than 1400. That's crazy, because what that means is we need to reduce the power of all these units to that level, the conventional units to that level, in order to match generation and the demand. But if we can put a lot of batteries charging at that moment in time during between 10 to 3 p.m., what that represents to the system. We are going to increase the load, and then we can manage much better the minimums, because we're adding, the batteries will be served as a load for the system. They are charging from the system, but from the operational point of view, that operation helps to keep the other generators at much higher level, more efficient levels, more stable levels. You see, so that's so that's the import. How important is to have more batteries in the system, and not only utility scale batteries. It could be residential, commercial, industrial batteries. So that's I believe this is something that we need to keep the conversation.
Let me ask you about a different type of battery that you also mentioned in the latest PRET publication, which is pumped hydroelectric storage. I grew up, an hour and a half away from Raccoon Mountain pump storage facility in Tennessee, and I think it's been online since the mid 70s. It has a gigawatt and a half or 1.6 gigawatts of pump storage capacity. What is the actual opportunity in Puerto Rico for pump storage as you see it? And how do that's a really good solution for when we have excess generation. But for the 25% of the times where we don't have sufficient generation, how do you understand that infrastructure value?
Yeah, that will be great if we have excess of renewable during the day, so we can use that energy to move the water from the water use from the reservoir to the area that the water will be just storage. You see, so the thing is, the federal agencies have been doing some research in our reserve, in water reserve in Puerto Rico, and there is a good opportunity to add this as part of the new projects in the island. But certainly that will help us that is another type of storage, and will help us not only to provide energy, but when you're using hydro system, you are providing ancillary services that the typical battery cannot provide, like short circuit capacity, inertia, and others. You see, so the batteries is important, but conventional generation that can be used using water will be more important maybe than the regular battery as well.
I agree with that, and the company I work for, Green Power Technologies, is eagerly pursuing distributed hydroelectric projects. I won't use this time to plug that, but we are going after small hydro projects all over the island.
But Sam, let me tell you something. The Energy Bureau just asked for proposals, or will ask for proposals to bring around 3,000 megawatts of additional generation, and it's any type of generation. And I believe that's a good opportunity to propose that type of installation. The thing is, the capex must be from the private sector. That's the goal. But certainly,
well, and that's one of the most attractive things about hydro is that it has a very long life cycle. Let's talk a little bit about that latest proposal. So the announcement was that there will be a rolling procurement process for 3,000 megawatts, not just of generation, but of base load generation, and very much of a different variety than the renewable energy procurements that mostly, if not exclusively, attracted utility scale solar farm. They're saying that they don't want anything above 400 megawatts, so projecting that up to 400 megawatts per project is what they're really attracting. What are your thoughts about this process? And very quickly, maybe you can respond to the fact that the projects that would bid on this have the same fundamental challenge as the first tranches, which is your counterparty is bankrupt. And
that's only the start of it.
And that's only the start of it, right? Tom and I have talked a lot about the lack of competitiveness with regards to the tranche-based procurement. This one, I think, is shades better, but has some of the same fundamental flaws. What are your thoughts there?
No, I think in this case, any proponent will have more advantage from the tranches. And I work during my 2 years in Luma exactly with the interconnection process for the tranches. And let me explain you a couple of difference here. If I think in any proposal for conventional generation, for instance, potentially what we are thinking is to use the existing point of interconnection. What that means. So, for instance, in Palo Seco, we have 2 units out of service. Any company can propose to install in that footprint a new combined cycle or a new set of more batteries or any other type of flexible resources. That's the key. I believe any type of resource, a new resource, a generation resource that must be added to the system must comply with the definition of flexible resource. That is, we need to, if we need to increase rapidly that resource capacity, yeah, that's the key. If we need to take that resource out of service during the day and then just to put in service immediately during the afternoon, that's the type of flexibility we need in the system. Let take a look of this. This is the real demand curve that we have in Puerto Rico. That was February. I just took this the printout of this behavior. The red line is the demand for from 10 a.m. around that until we say 8 p.m. You know, let's focus on this. So as you can see, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., the demand is decreasing dramatically. Before the renewal, we were just we have experienced another peak at midday. So this is mainly because at that moment in time, everybody that has the renewals especially on distribution side, they're producing their own generation. That's great. Everybody is producing more than 100% of their needs at that moment in time, and the excess of that production goes to the grid through the net metering program. That's beauty. The only thing is, you know, the issue is this variability that you can see here. You know, the line goes ups and down. You know, those variation and the fast, you know, ramps ups and down. That's the challenge, the operational challenge that we need to address, not with these units. You know, this is why we need flexible resources. Instead of this steam unit, we need to add here more battery, or we need to add here the pump storage project, or we need to add here a combined cycle, medium size combined. So I believe we don't need in Puerto Rico any big power plant. I believe that we need to have like mid-sized units or small units that we can turn off and start up and based on the system needs. And we should have like a mix of energy. If you allow me just to present the mix of energy that I believe, okay, here.
Danny, well, you're pulling it up. You've used the
That,
term adaptive energy mix.
that's right.
And that's super important.
And this
There it
is,
is.
in my mind, what we should have as a mixed energy that includes 3 different components: clean energy, you know, any type of clean energy. It could be utility scale, rooftop solar, wind, and any other that falls on the definition of clean energy. Second, we need to add more upgrades to the transmission and distribution system in order to manage the variability on this mix, especially on energy management system that is under Luma. We need to add smart grids, you know, all this technology. This is part of the solution, part of the formula here between these 3 categories, and the flexible resources, as you can see. We need to add all these elements. we have a huge opportunity in Puerto Rico for investors right now because we have 72% of the base load power plant needs to be replaced. 72%. So 72% of the energy needs to be replaced by different flexible technology, more batteries, more virtual power plants, more peakers that we can use if we receive a big hurricane, to have more black star capabilities, medium-sized combined cycles. And the advantage is we have a lot of existing point of interconnection that the proponent can use. Instead of the trenches, the proponent needs to, purchase a piece of land. It's a greenfield construction, and then to build a transmission line on to connect that facility to any existing substation. It's very hard to do that right now in Puerto Rico. So what I believe should be the priority is to maximize the existing point of interconnection in the system. That thing, I think this is the best way to add the new resources that we have in Puerto Rico. And why I call it adaptive, because I believe the right amount of capacity or of each of these technology must come from engineering analysis. It should not be from any aspirational idea or any political decision. We need to emphasize on engineering analysis. After the engineering analysis has been done, then we can determine how much flexible resources we need to manage any level of renewable generation in Puerto Rico, to match proportionally. Same to determine the transmission and distribution upgrades required to manage that level of mix of energy, and then allow the execution. And after that, we need to start again, in order to just to go phase by phase, increasing the renewables together with increasing the flexible resources. In this case, is the blue column, and to allow Luma to do the transmission and distribution upgrades completed, by phase. So this is the idea I present on the energy and the Puerto Rico Energy Week, how we can increase renewable without putting in risk the system.
Well,
Yeah,
and it comes at, go ahead, Tom.
Oh no, I was just saying, we can't break down the need to make sure that there is a reliable and resilient, energy system at almost any price, which you don't have and we don't have in Puerto Rico. But I wanted to quickly kind of switch back on a couple of things that I think will help move things forward. You tap the duck curve, looking at Puerto Rico. I mean, the impacts of the duck curve in Puerto Rico are not nearly as severe as other markets, given the level of penetration, because of the prevalence of battery storage being added at generation source houses, small businesses, etc. And yet, it still does have an effect. So, one of the things that I don't know if you recommend, but in terms of net metering, which is kind of both the culprit and the savior, depending on who you ask, is moving toward something like a net metering 2.0, net metering 3.0, or VPP 1.0, where we end up taking the battery capacity and incentivizing people to add additional battery capacity, because even with the battery capacity that they currently have, they're putting too much onto the system at a time when it is creating problems, negative value, or low value as opposed to higher value. Is there something that you would recommend in there that might move toward that, in terms of people pulling in the same direction, on the oars in the same boat, with regulation, et cetera, that might move people from net metering to being participants in a potentially profitable VPP situation.
Yeah, there is one claim regarding the VPP, and it's the cost. You know, right now we have like 10 megawatts or so in a VPP program, and the cost is $1.25 per kilowatt hour. That's the cost approved for a VPP, which is super high. So one of the suggestions that I have to take more advantage, if we need to pay that, if it is in that way, then we need to add more capability. How we can improve the current VPP, because the VPP for the benefit of everybody is to manage this situation here in the peak demand during the evening. This is when the value of the VPP is there, because it's a demand reduction. What that means, you know, every time the VPP has been called to be in service, the battery just serve the customer their own load. So from the operational point of view, it's a reduction in demand because we don't have maybe enough capacity in the system. So it's for the evening, but we can use the VPP to avoid the lot of ramps that we have here. If we got the battery charged, and if we use the battery to manage the ramp, that will be a great solution, because the VPP will have more value, because we are managing the ramping during the day and the high demand during the evening. And then
Yeah.
I think in that way, we can say, yeah, $1.25 is great for to cover, you know, both scenarios. But not
My key concern with the VPPs is that it doesn't overcome the collective action problem that drives people to have individual residential systems in the first place. And so the sense is that I'm gonna resolve my issues by having a system on my roof. And the VPP system then asks them to participate in a broader system that they're trying to get away from at a very high cost to everybody else. And that just to me seems like we're trying to take advantage of very different rationales with regards to why people are pursuing these types of solutions. And I think that it's not unreasonable to expect people to opt out of the program when they're asked to participate in the broader goal. It's like, well, no, but if the broader system is having troubles, I'm going to take care of myself first and go after the exact same logic that, or go down the same logical route as why I put rooftop solar and batteries on my house in the first place.
I mean, again, it's a problem with the system. I think, I mean, your point is generally right, but I mean, I think, we talk about peak shaving, we can talk about nadir shaving, right? Like the lowest point, but what we don't have in Puerto Rico is time of day pricing, right? So, I mean, it's one of the things that could move a long way to moving people from dumping power on the system, maybe investing in more batteries, incentivizing things, so that you don't end up with the trough that, under the current conditions, it's virtually impossible for the system to respond to.
It's such an important point. And Danielle mentioned earlier that
Yeah.
demand has to equal supply. There's no other way for it to happen. And price is the key mechanism to get there, right?
This is the basic.
Plus some system loss factor, right? Don't forget that in Puerto Rico.
Any type of generation must have three different characteristics: balance, firm, and dispatchable. You know, see,
Yeah.
the generation increase, you need, it's the load increase, you need to increase the generation in the same proportion. You see, firm, why firm? Because we need to get the generation system must have some ancillary services in order to send the power from the power plant through transmission line, through substation, through distribution. You see, so needs to be firm. That's why we need to support the renewables with flexible resources and dispatchable, because we need generation 24/7. You see, it could be only during the daytime. So I believe, you know, there is a, if everybody understand, you know, the right people understand this curve, I believe we can take the right decision. The thing is, the people are maybe the people who has the power to make decision, the decision makers, maybe they don't understand how the system works, because this is the right now, this is the behavior with 1100 of renewables in service, but in
It's only going up.
in 2 years
Like
from now,
like you're being kind. There is no maybe about it. They haven't a clue.
that's right. I want to be more diplomatic, but the thing is, imagine from now to 2 years that we should have around another 1,000 additional renewables in service. Why 1,000? Because we have approved 844 megawatts on utility scales, plus the rooftop solar, it could be another 200 megawatts from now on
Or
till
more. Yeah.
7.
Right. Not base load though,
This is
right? I
part of
mean,
this is part of the thread of March that I'm gonna be publishing next week. Is exactly how the system will manage this additional 1,000 megawatt with this, because it's crazy if we believe that we can reduce this demand curve in the 1100 during the day. There is no way to manage that. And
Yeah.
you know what is the consequence? If we don't have enough battery, we need to curtail. If we curtail the renewables, we need to pay anyway the power, because those, you know, in utility scale, those are
correct.
pay or take, you know, take or pay contract. So you need to pay
Right.
anyway.
Which
You say, no,
which they have to be because of everything else and not enough margin, not enough price to make them merchant. So it just falls back on everything else. Yeah, it's
Daniel, what we're coming up on our time here. What is the best place for people to follow your work?
LinkedIn is this is I'm gonna be publishing, you know, insights and share the information from not from on behalf of any company. Right now I'm working for Genera, but the insights that I'm putting is coming just as collaboration I want to do for the benefit of all the stakeholders in Puerto Rico using my experience. So please go to my LinkedIn and see, you know, the next week I'm going to be publishing that very interesting article. And if everybody wants, or anybody wants one specific topic, I'm going to be happy to write down on any request as well. So open to keep the conversation, open to keep sharing my thoughts and participating in important, you know, conversation like this one. So thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and hopefully we can keep the conversation ongoing.
Daniel,
of
really
course.
appreciate your insights and thoughtfulness as to these issues. We'll make sure that we share your LinkedIn page. I highly encourage everybody who is listening to take a look at the PRET publications. I'm very much looking forward to the one coming out for this month. And Daniel, gracias de nuevo por participar y ser parte del
Sí,
foro.
No,
Thank you
por
for being a
cierto.
part of this.
gracias a
And
ustedes.
Danny, I hope you know, I think we're gonna run another National Clean Energy Week event in September. There may be other things, but we hope that you'll join us and other folks from Genera for that, and we can get a bunch of people together to really work through and educate a bunch of people on these and other issues.
Happy to share, happy to participate. Just call me.
We appreciate
Love to.
that. All right, it is this is crazy and it is March Madness, so we will leave it there. Thank you guys for tuning in. And
Tennessee's already started, right? Halfway through the first half. So
Tennessee started. We're halfway through the first half. We're going to put a whooping on on Wofford, and I'm going to go tune into the rest of that game. Danny, thank you again, and great talking to you all. Appreciate it, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
everyone.